Thank you all for jumping on today. It's lovely Wednesday, and thanks for spending some time over your lunch hour with us. Or if you're over in WA, obviously it's still morning there, but welcome. And we've got a very interesting webinar today to present to you. Obviously, there's been a lot of interest. We've had a lot of registrations for this. I will just share my screen now and start the presentation. All right, I hope you can all see that. So yeah, today we are going to be talking about SDA Knockdown Rebuild projects. I've got Minh. I'm Debbie from NDIS Property Australia. Minh is also with me. Unfortunately, Minh has a bit of a cold today, so he's a little croaky. Won't be able to talk too much. And we've got a very special guest speaker, Mehul from SDA Choice. I'll introduce Mehul in a moment. But I will just continue on firstly with just a general disclaimer about any information that is in this webinar. Obviously, you need to make sure that you get professional advice relevant to what you're looking to do. We are recording this presentation. Everyone will get a copy of that within the next 48 hours, along with a copy of the slides. If you've got any questions at all, please feel free to pop them into the chat box down the bottom, the question and answer box at the bottom of your screen. We will endeavour to get to all the questions during the presentation if they're relevant, and any others that we haven't answered, we will hold off until the end of the presentation. So please put in your questions that that come to mind when they do. We'd be more than happy to address them. So for some of you, I know who've come through our database, you know who NDIS Property Australia is, but I think there's a few new people who've registered. Welcome. Very nice to meet you. We are NDIS Property Australia, a Brisbane-based advisory and consulting firm. We specialise in SDA within the NDIS world. We have a lot of educational tools on our website. We have our podcast, the SDA Housing Podcast. I'd recommend anyone who hasn't listened to that to jump on and listen to some of our episodes. We're almost up to number 300, so there's quite a lot of content there. We sell property, but we also do offer a fee-for-service advisory as well, and love to talk about anything and everything SDA. So those of you who were waiting before we actually started the presentation, I was showing this slide, which is our SDA process. So as you can see, if you're relatively new to the SDA world, there's a lot to take in here. And just remember, you will get a copy of these slides along with the video of the presentation. So don't worry too much about trying to take note of any of this. But this is just an overall view at how it all comes together, all the different aspects that need to be considered, all the different stakeholders that go into the process. And I think it's quite relevant for SDA as well as other purchases within the SDA world. But today, obviously, we are speaking specifically about knockdown rebuilds. And I'd like to now introduce our guest speaker, Mehul, who he's been based in Melbourne since 1996. So almost 30 years now, Mehul.
Yes, stop counting now.
And a vast experience in property development and financial world as well. But you've been doing knockdown rebuild projects for about the last 13 years now, including some SDAs that you've done, and you're going to talk through some of those specifics in this presentation.
Yes, absolutely.
You're qualified also in electrical engineering, financial advising, building and construction. So Mehul obviously brings a vast wealth of experience into this space. Mehul founded SDA Choice to help investors make informed decisions and deliver high quality NDIS compliant homes. So under his leadership, SDA Choice has become a trusted partner, managing every stage from the feasibility to handover and often rescuing struggling projects. Mehul's team offers end-to-end SDA development, partner selection, compliance, NDIS tenancy matching, and participant sourcing. Mehul's strategic vision ensures that each home meets both participant needs and investor goals, building that bridge between community care and long-term investment success, which is so important. And Mehul, I'd like to hand over to you now.
Thank you, Debbie and Minh, for having me. And hello to everyone. Thanks for being here. And yeah, so today it's obviously we are following the presentation. For me, it is more of a storytelling, and pretty much as a investor, as a developer, or even when I started my journey, and even till now, I'm learning every day from the site. So that's why I'm quite passionate to have this sort of forum where I can be just have too many people get the benefits. So amazing work, Min and Debbie, you are doing and giving this platform for the experts and for investors for this. So I think that's why it's easier to for me also not to have 10, 15 conversations and having this one session. So many of you guys or investors would know many of these things. So everyone's learning curve would be different. So sometimes you may find a little bit too detailed. Sometimes you find too advanced. But that's where we can always do the Q&A, and you can always find more insights. So these are the four. And again, before this, you know that SDA is the Specialized Disability Accommodation. It's funded by our wonderful program, which has been funded by federal government. It is an insurance agency at the end of the day, and this particular accommodation part falls under the home and living. And this we are talking about the brand new homes. Quite often investors are not sure that what about my existing property, or what about I can modify my existing, which we'll cover later on. But in general, what NDIS and NDIA had proposed that these are the four type of dwelling types which are in line with the disability. And disability is classified further through the functional assessments and allied health interventions. So really, it is a very well structured program. It's not that what you see from the outside that this person is disabled, that's why this person will go into particular dwelling. So it's quite complex, but at the same time, it's a very streamlined process. So to classify, robust is the one particular category is designed for the mental disability, and the remaining three categories, which we call in a short from IL or FA or HPS, you often hear those acronyms, and that's what it belongs to. So the improved livability, fully accessible and high physical support, they all are pretty much related to the physical disability. But unfortunately, most of the people with physical disability had different variation of mental health a requirement and support. So if we talk about the improved livabilities, often people get confused that it's very close design type between the robust and IL, because that's why people start with hybrid. You may often hear the word hybrid. So these are the two categories where are easily interchangeable, and we will touch base later on. But like one project I started as a IL, and then with the demand I could convert into robust, and we will talk about those things. But yeah, that these two about two categories are really connected when it comes to the design specifications. And obviously there are some set rules which I'm not qualified, but we at least know from the participant request point of view. The fully accessible, as it says, that is a one category below high physical support. So when it comes to high physical support, you need the provision for the hoist and lots of automation, and there are certain rules and regulations, and you can upgrade FA to high physical support. Again, that is something a smart investors put that into their thinking head, that at the cost of this, if we can put extra beam, and then if we can put the hoist in future, this FA can be upgraded into high physical. Again, that's the kind of giving you both from the disability side and from the building side, how those four different categories are important. And if we go with the SDA dwelling type, that is something which we all know, but again, it has got a set rules because the rent is paid by NDIA. And those rents, the key part about the dwelling types here is important because it should match the service ratio. So I always call the tenancy ratio and the service ratio. So we need to make sure that if you are building a house for three people, then we need to find three people for the service funding also. So it's not just about the rental component, it's also from the service component. So
Mehul, sorry,
yes.
can I just get you to talk a little bit more about the service component, what you actually mean there? You're talking about the care provision.
Yes, so I think that's where many investors often get overwhelming and confused that someone told me to build this house and I build and someone told me there is lots of demand and why I'm not getting that what I have been promised. So that's where the second tier I always request investors that this is the obviously healthcare investment for a community benefit. So the normal investment knowledge should be higher than non-NDIS investment because it's a social cause. And I always empower and encourage people to learn a little bit more about disability because eventually you are also feeling proud that I'm not just collecting the rent, but I'm really making positive influence. So coming back to that question, Debbie, what that means that if you are building, let's say high physical, the most common ratio right now is called 1 to 3. So that means that three people are living in the house and each of those people would have a limited service budget which is getting shared between three of them. So what that means that if the level of the service funding is determined by the intensity of disability, if that makes sense. So if someone has got a high requirement, they will have 8 hours in a day for 101 service funding, but then remaining 6 to 8 hours they need to get and share with another two participants. So that is where you can see that how the ratio is important and the dwelling is important. Quite often the investors say that, but I'm happy with two people to live and I'm happy with two rent rather than three. But then that is where the supported independent living, the SIL providers comes into the picture and they should be having a good understanding about all of this. And then they are playing a big role to find the right balance for the investor. So in a nutshell, it is like a hand in hand, both housing and service goes together. Again, it's not complicated, but it needs the planning, knowledge, strategy right from the beginning when you make your investment decision. And then it's the same thing, you have a villa. Villas are very popular for mental disability robust because it's very it is a common sense that person with mental disability would not like to share with someone and someone may not like to share because of noise and other safety factors. So often investors think that why villas are popular in certain areas, but then we know that what type of villas which we are building. Same with IL, improved livability villas are also fine. So yeah, these are the different ratios, but everything is also connected with the type of disability. What is that demand in that disability side rather than just looking the area. So quite often people say, but I said, I don't see many plans coming. Means from just talking with other colleagues that right now the trend is that it's extremely difficult to get 101 robust for mental health because the whole part which we need to work through NDIS is going through some review. And again, this I'm giving example. It's not the fact, but I'm just giving this sort of changing environment why it is important to talk with someone and to get on top of it. And it is no, I'm not saying that it just changes overnight. I'm just saying that have a bulletproof thought process so your investment is well protected. And now we can talk about a little bit more visual and relaxing stuff and not too much information. It's obviously often people ask that, why knockdown rebuild, and many of you would have investment background. Many of you may have invested into a non knockdown rebuild projects, but for the purpose of today's session, that I'm a big believer. I really am passionate about the accommodation. We work with Salvation Army, we work with homelessness. We really like driven from accommodation, not just from brick and cements. But I always say that you cannot discriminate disability from where you are born. So if someone is born in Turak, for example, as an example in Melbourne, that and Turak, if you don't get the villa, that person needs to go 30 kilometers out from Turak. Or even you means what I mean is that the unfortunately the real estate price is dictating the knockdown rebuild. But at the same time, if you can see and you are a seasoned investor, and if you think that I want to think above and beyond my rental component, I'm investing in a property. That property is excellent when I get the rent, but it is also appreciating. So I think location is purely like how you actually make the decision on your normal investment. That why we go in certain areas, because we think the forecast looks these areas are going to be great. Other one is the compliance. So that is against the renovation side, where you are going with the uh, home modification or renovation. Often investors are not aware that your rental component significantly reduces. That's number one. And there is a set guideline from SDA or NDIA that you need to make certain amount of money in the project to make it converted from a normal house to a SDA home, and that is called existing stock. But what we mean is that the compliance is important. You still need to go through the same process of SD assessment. You need to get the certification and everything. And I have my existing properties. I tried to. That's how I started 4 years ago, when I tried to convert my existing property without knowing too much about the how rental works. And then I also called the assessor to give me advice and say, look. You are there, but unfortunately your property is pretty much there without, and the from memory I had to spend $150,000 to make it SDA compliant. But
Mm.
the reason is I didn't have that work to be done in the property.
Yeah. And the other thing too, Mehul, if you want to do a renovation or a refurbishment to make it new build SDA compliant, there are minimum refurb costs that are up around the $400,000
Yes,
amounts.
yes,
So in a lot of cases, you may as well build new.
yes. I had recently got one investors who did everything and then it got rejected, and now it's a really but it's a different story. But yeah, so that is always there. But again, like this is the discussion is to really give investors the clarity around the difference of existing property converting into SDA versus brand new property, and there is a significant different processes and the rental outcome you get. The better ROI is the key thing which I touched earlier in the location advantage. So when you are doing the purpose built dwelling plus your own design is very important in the knockdown rebuild, because that's your first competitive advantage, because you are optimizing your site. You are meeting with people who have got experience, but as an investor, as a project managers, we always look that how to optimize the site first and what are the benefits in Victoria, which we'll touch base later on. But in Victoria there are a great leeway for the disability homes, and you can get over some of the town planning requirements. So that's where you have that ROI component is better on the knockdown, plus your vacancy rate. When you talk about your rental part, literally, let's take an example that, and this is a real life example, that if I can build a product or a house in a home and land environment, it may cost me 1.1 million. And the same thing if I do and build into established area, it may cost me 1.4 million. So let's say $300,000, knowing upfront I'm going with that mindset. One, that there is a higher chances of that 1.4 million appreciating in future just by doing nothing. And second, that you are going to have higher chances of finding the participants and for the long term. because they are with their surrounding. Many people or many investors are not aware that many properties right now, the oversupply stock, people are staying there as an interim, and they have been given lots of red carpet treatment to get the participant because of the supply demand. So that's why I think the retention, the longevity, the appreciation on your asset, and overall the out of competition, these are the factors which gives you the better ROI. Especially this is coming from my personal scenario, but I'm not advising from that aspect. The quality of life, like little things you can do when you are having a property near the bus stop, near the supermarket, near the established buzzing community, playgrounds, special needs school, day programs for disabled people, taking them out for community connectivity. So this all really is supporting them to achieve their goals and getting their health improvement. So there is a whole environment factor which is often missed from the investor side of it. And that is something very important to know, that what you are doing at the end of the day should tick the box. And that's where all those quality of life factor comes into the play. And if we look at the identifying good KDR opportunities, and to be honest, it's not easy. The reason being, you need to tick boxes of ROI. You need to also look at the investors' finance appetite. You need to look out of pocket, which you need to be prepared. So yeah, it is again, nothing is easy, but this is definitely, you are in a greater control if you get the right steps and you project manage that very smartly from the right. So basically, you map out the whole step number 1 to 20 and work backwards from 20 towards 1. Most of the investors, I find that they know 1 to 20, but they have not mapped out. So they are having lots of challenges just to reach even step number 10. And then it becomes, excitement converts into a headache. And that is something which, again, we have seen, and it happens non-NDIS knockdown rebuild right now in Victoria. You know how many builders and how many things which we hear in everywhere, but that's, knockdown rebuild is a very different beast. And if you don't know, it's a different story. But yeah, that's a separate whole discussion, that what are the technical differences. But the appropriate zoning, the prime location, which we discussed earlier, I mentioned about all those location factor. You are in a better control if you go into the like your home and land, or any other investment. You are dictated by that, and you don't know, even your next door neighbor could be an investor into NDIS, while here you are having a lesser chances that you are having a unique spot in that community, and it's not easy someone to come and copy and knock down and rebuild. So appropriate zoning. The other thing I would also say, the demand assessment. So just to go with the appropriate zoning, that your SDA rental also is dictated by the suburb. I'm big passionate, and I wrote the letter also, that the rental component should be adjusted significantly as per the area. Because the rental component by the zoning is not aligned or reflective of the actual property cost. But that's, again, it's a relatively new scheme, and we are very excited that we have something like that in the developed world. It's not out there. So that's the first thing. I always say that it's very easy to find the loopholes and blame the system, but at the same time, we have something in place, so we are actually complaining. If we don't have. So that's my philosophy. But yeah, so appropriate zoning is something which is very important from that aspect, that how you are going to do even zoning from the council component, also very important. We know in Victoria, some councils are painful to deal with, some councils are good, some councils are really advanced in the disability and community housing, some councils have got division for that, they have a targets and KPIs for that. So that these are all factors makes a huge difference when you are doing the knockdown rebuild. And so zoning from rental aspects and zoning from building aspects. The demand assessment is something is very important. But what I was saying, that the evidence of local SDA need from providers, and under that we earlier discussed that we need to look at the disability cluster, that what are the type of disabilities, how many hospitals in that area, what are the hospitals basically bed situation there, how many mental health, and that's what, Mean, Debbie and the team is brilliant in checking those things and really giving the rich data, and that makes that particular well informed decision. So it's a starting point of demand assessment. So what I call the bubble boy. So we have a number, and we also have a story behind the number, and then we have a validation point. So that is much more stronger than just having, I call the data. So yeah, so demand assessment is extremely important. And the good thing and the bad thing, the good thing is that you have got all the information. The bad thing, it's a quite dynamic industry. Things can change. So it's not only looking at what is being built and what is the demand now, but you never know, there are another 15 projects and 15 investors are thinking like you. And that's where I call the ground reality. You need to get the ground reality. Nothing wrong. It's better to know about the competition rather than having a, a like a blind approach. So that's where I think demand assessment is 360: ground reality, data, community need, and the overall healthcare system within that region. And then obviously you are out there in the community, and you meet with the right people who are doing their job day in day out. And that's how I learn that sort of confidence, by doing that. And still I'm learning. You can't get right. There is no magic bullet. You have to keep on reinventing.
Okay, there's a couple of questions I think we might quickly go to now, Mehul.
Yeah.
The first one from an anonymous attendee: what about the difference in vacancy rate between the outer suburbs versus the inner suburbs knockdown rebuild? Very good question. Very, very good question. This
Yeah.
really touches on the fact that the greenfield sites are massively oversupplied.
Yes.
And do you want to, talk more about the vacancies because of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there is a huge, it's like chalk and cheese. We know
Mm.
from general that if there is a more affordability for investors, it's a volume game for more investors to get into the market. That's the first simple rule for any investment rather than NDIS investment. The second thing is that I have also seen that the knowledge of investor, what is, I think often I hear that, oh, the old car salesperson sold me this and that. But I would say that you have to make your well educated decision. As an investor, you should have done your education. You have to really cross check the facts, like things like what we are talking today. So we have, especially the big estate, we have lots of investors. They call us, same to you, Debbie and Mean. But we have that market in certain pockets are a little bit oversaturated, purely because of the demand is static. It's more supply. And in disability, demand cannot just overnight increase. You are not going to register new people in with disability. Like, it's a very slow process. It's a very complex process. And it's a separate topic, but that's also important in knockdown rebuild. The benefit is you can start working about the marketing and engaging the community almost 6 months. That's what I do for my projects. If and sometimes you are just put your own priority last, and I missed 3 months in my own project, and it got delayed by 3 months. So that's what. So coming back to the original question is that we have significant difference in supply demand. How I see that your vacancy rate in some areas, I have seen investors property are empty for 1 year in the home and land, and they are coming for non SDA rental with SIL providers. We help them also for that, and we said that rather than, and we try to get them some more rent little bit than in between. I won't say in between, but let's say, if normal rental in that area for normal house is $30,000, we understand the investment situation in this sense. Imagine the case study of 1 year no return, and then they're paying the interest. We try to get them $40,000 and find the SIL providers to get that accommodation. So that's the one particular area. While you are building into the established suburb, it's a very different approach. Your marketing needs to be very strategic. The people you are dealing also changes, because they are you are dealing with the higher end market in general, without classifying or stereotype classification. But it's very common. People are scared of the law. They are having a better outfit. They are not going to be just like 1 year business plan and then disappear. And we have heard lots of horror stories on NDIS recently. So I think that's important. That's also advantage in working with the professionals, because if investor is putting 1.5 million envelope, the $50,000 for extra to protect that investor, that's the seasoned investors mentality. Versus if you are a the mom and dad, and you are paying your initial mortgage, and then you are starting your investment journey, that's where it's very important that what you have understood and who has advised you about your investment trajectory. So obviously I always tell people, don't start on a wrong foot. It's better to delay, but don't get rushed decision. And again, not from financial advising, this is like talking with mates and personal experience with my family and friends, I tell them. So yeah, that's, I think, hope gives that answer about the supply demand. That is, again, percentage wise, that is, the data is not static, but take it this way. I have not seen the in the established area too much problem with the vacancy rate or investors are losing money. Your break even is definitely much more achievable. I have seen recently in Melbourne, I have seen that, imagine that there is a one area A which has got lots of demand 3 years ago. Now investors have started building in that area and putting lots of money. But for last 3 years, those people had to go somewhere. So they have already gone 15, 20 kilometers from those areas. And now I can see they are willing to come back to area A. That's the competitive advantage. That's the vacancy rate example. People have gone as a compromise, but they will always come back to their family. They will always come back to their community. And that time they don't look at just the service provider. They also look at the housing. They also look the quality. They may compromise. Oh, I don't have a big backyard, but I'm living in a buzzing community. That's
Mm.
very important.
Thanks, Mehul. All right, let's move on to the next slide.
Yes, so this is the more of, now we are going towards the building process, and also a little bit boring but important, especially in the project management side. Every Some part is interdependent. In the project management definition, if you can't do step 2, you can go to step 3. But there are lots of other things which you need to do in parallel. That's the biggest thing we learn in last in development in general since 2012, that you must have that's the time efficiency, cost efficiency, and the productivity in general. So planning permits are very important, and we start usually that process right at the time of feasibility. So we need to know from council, we need to know what are the council policies, and many investors would know that there is a overarching town planning framework footprint, and then there is a council specific footprint, and then on top of that, which councils are going to overrule the NDIS and community housing. And that's three things which comes into planning permits. Usually if you are building one house knockdown rebuild, it's a very straightforward. But if you are still subdividing, if you are doing three villas, you are doing that sort of projects I have done, I need to still get the consent. So I'm again talking from my own projects. It's nothing to do with double story, single story subdivision. It is just that process which we need to understand. And I often project manage, and I often go, in my example, I try to just do the follow-ups, because time delays, architect office, town planners, drafts people, the building engineers, those people are having their own day-to-day job, and as a project manager you need to keep pushing, what's happening, what's happening, what's happening. So I think that's the planning permits. Same thing, demolition. For example, I'm settling a site. I know that once it goes to the settlement, that day onwards, I need to just book the abolishment. I need, because it takes gas, electricity, looks very simple. It takes 6 weeks. 6 weeks interest gone. You have already settled the property. So all those smarts, how you save your money by knowing all these little processes. It seems demolition, you just call the demolition person. I learn many building or tradespeople, they do their specific job. They are not doing all this periphery thing. They said, this is Mr. Developer, this is your problem. And if I'm a passive developer, I don't have a time to do that. And then you are suddenly started negatively, in a not negatively, but like a reverse direction, in a way that your project is getting delayed. And I have done, unfortunately, I've gone through all of this in early from 2012 to 2015. I thought I have given the contract to the builder in knockdown rebuild, and house will be ready as per the contract. It doesn't happen that way. So I think I call before, during, and after. These are all the a before process. If you cluster that, this is all the planning. The funding and finance, that's even before the feasibility. So we should know before we jump into it that, okay, average, we will cover somewhere, but yeah, you should have at least 20 to 30% of funding, which is you required in this, like, how Min and I, we were talking other day that how we go on a land and home package environment when you always need to get the finance for the land first, and then you combine the loans and things like that. So the same thing here, but different, that when you are buying that first land, bank may not give you the full 90%, 100%, depending upon who you are borrowing from. But yeah, that's, I always say that have your finance situation really clear, and make sure that you always have a contingency. So if you need 20%, you keep 30%, because that 10% variance may happen in knockdown rebuild. Um, so yeah, have conservative approach in that. From the design, so creating accessible purpose built. So in the design, that's the most I often get invited into the architect office for investors. We talk with architects. You have a panel of professionals, but again, you need to go from area to area. So that is a very, people just see design from, unfortunately, many investors I met, they see the design from what rent you get. 3 bedroom, one OA, I get $150,000. I like this design. It's not that simple, and especially when you do with the higher end investment, you need to go a little bit much in depth. Like as I said, that in design, we have put the extra room in one of the plans, which we'll share with you, that it's a fourth bedroom, not bedroom, but it is for family, it's for allied health, it's for privacy. When you can fit in for $15,000 extra, that will give you the actual winning formula. So all those design concepts are important. If you are building side by side, or if you are building two villas, how the two bedrooms are facing each other, how the accessibility, you don't want to tick box just in knockdown rebuild, you just don't want to tick box for the assessor's point of view. You need to go a little bit lavish. You need to go. So one of my properties, we had an option of having a half bench, which is a fully automated, and a full bench. And we said, yeah, how good that if we get the full bench, then two people in the wheelchair can do their independent cooking, cutting. So you need to go into that sort of thought process when you are designing. You are designing by literally visualizing that someone with that disability is going to enjoy this design or not. So that's about design, and it's very like, I'm very passionate about sharing those stories about design, because my other side sees that every day. So the location is, obviously we discuss about that, so I won't go too much into details. We covered earlier. The provider, we have partnerships with the provider collaboration in general. So I think the partnership with SDA, providers, support coordinators, and other skill ensuring long. So I think that this is again in the building blocks, that as an investor, you have a consultant. You need to, and that's also, I would say, a little bit of a legal side. I have seen some scenarios when investors have been, engaged in a contract which are quite questionable. That they thought I have signed for this, but they have also signed for SDA provider in the mix. So it's also important that you meet with someone knowledgeable, and walk you through the key people. And while we talk, the key people are the SDA provider, the SIL provider, obviously your property team to start with. But during that time, who is marketing your property, how it's being marketed, why not to just give someone the full control, and also just trying to really get involved in the whole process. Also understanding a little bit of legal side of it. What are the type of contracts, which I think we have done one webinar in the past to talk about different contracts, and who is accountable for those contracts, and why it's like that. So as an investor, it's very important that you are asking the right questions to manage your SLA, manage those contracts, manage those service providers to your contract. Because often investors obviously think very overwhelming, that this is too much, I thought I just want to invest. But again, if we talk through, someone explains to you, then you are empowered, and then you know that I'm getting this service.
So I think this is just an overview of sort of where we've discussed so far, Mehul.
Yeah, that's pretty much we touch base. Thanks, Debbie. So we've gone through the initial assessments, which basically talks about everything, the design, finance, feasibility, area, supply demand, all that falls into that. The design and certification. So that's also important that you have an engagement of SDA assessor. I always do for my projects. I have a SDA assessor engaged with architect at the design stage, so you don't have any surprises. Again, it saves lots of time. And then you get the preliminary okay on the architectural drawings. So that's something, design and certification is really important, so you don't want to go backwards after going all the way up. And then architect would say, but you didn't tell us, because there is nothing called SDA approved architect or SDA approved builder. So that's something is very important. The planning and approvals we touch base. With demolition permits, as I mentioned, it seems simple, but it's very important. You need to look at through, like I'm just going through the quotations where someone just says that I'm the cheapest, but then they come and say $7,000 for the asbestos. And we said, but you didn't tell me. They said, look the fine print in the contract, we put it. So this is what in the early days I have been part of it. All these little things you have just gives you the bad taste if it's not planned and project managed properly. So uh, obviously the team of building professionals for construction is equally important. I usually go for my projects 3 courts, no matter who you know, and at least have a good understanding. One thing I would say, and this is I'm just sharing, obviously as an investor, not everyone needs to know. What I learned that in NDIS, usually investors in the non NDIS, I used to don't I was not focusing into the structural and civil engineering, right? And that is the biggest thing, that in NDIS, because of the rule, like building the house to the street level, for example, excavation cost, site cut cost, the retaining wall cost, all those things you need to map out. And that's what we do in our projects, to really check that level, to really not to have any surprises. And that's where you know what builder is quoting, what the person who is making the slab is quoting. So again, too detailed, but giving you a bit of a flavor of how the knockdown rebuilt NDIS project construction project management works. The NDIS enrollment, that is equally important. The enrollment part, usually you still need to go to the through the building processes. So you need to get occupation permit, occupancy permit, before you go with the actual registration with NDIS. And you also need to get the build as certificate from the SDA provider. That's where, sorry, SDA assessor. That's where it's so important. That's where the final inspection comes from SDA assessor. And again, this is like a separate to the building inspection. I always encourage to have a SDA assessor pay that extra money, but let SDA assessor come at the certain stages. So again, towards the end of the project, you don't get surprises, especially if it's a plumbing related issue. Oh, your toilet seat is should be 400 meters from the wall. Now, how can you change the drainage system at that late in the piece? You can change the door size and this and that. So these are the another real life experience. We need to make sure that we have that project management for all the stages and ticked all the boxes for all the professionals. And again, they don't cost that much.
Thanks, Mehul. I might break and go through a few questions that we've got come in. From Simran, is there a specific architect, building designers, or draftsman do you suggest to use for maximum land use and clever multi-dwelling viability with SDA? We're based in Adelaide. If you suggest anyone, thanks. Well,
Yeah.
Simran, good question. Yeah, there's a lot of parts of this process. And it doesn't start with the architect or designers. Really, it starts with concept. A lot of the architects that even deal specifically in SDA, you'll find, don't really, they're good at designing an actual property, but they don't necessarily know if that's going to deliver the best use of site. Mehul would definitely be someone to deal with in Melbourne. Unfortunately, he only works in the Melbourne market. We ourselves also do feasibility and site assessments. And from there on, it will be a process of working out what is going to be the best use of site, what is going to be the best use of different dwelling types. And then when you've decided what's going to work best, then you take it to architects who understand the SDA space. So yeah, you don't start with them really. You'd have to move forward. And, really architects don't have to be in the right location. You also need to be dealing with town planners, the SDA assessors early on as well. Very happy for us to talk to you more, Simran, about that if you wanted to get in touch with us on that process and how it should work.
Just to add one
Yeah.
thing, Debbie, sorry, it is the general rule is the irrespective of the state specific, and I can share from Victoria and then check into obviously in South Australia. But the three things: one is the drafts people, they usually are more equipped with the town planning and not the architects. Some architects have drafts division in their office, and some people refer to someone. The second thing is we call overlays all over Australia. So what you can build and can't build on those land is a public information available, and you can always contact the council. I always do before I go auction, call council, find out. You can also find out by council that what other people have built in that area. That is very important. So you are not stuck and you have that example that hang on, you have given permit to this person. Anyway, that's just the area of the similarities irrespective of the state, and then it goes to the state by state.
Yeah, thanks, Mehul. Very true.
Thanks. Yeah.
Shweta came in with a question earlier. Mehul mentioned about Knockdown Rebuild. Will that not be more expensive for me? Well, this comes down to the overall concept of why you're doing a Knockdown Rebuild, Shweta. We've already touched on, or Mehul's touched on the difficulties with refurbishments, which can often end up being as expensive and not as fit for purpose. At the end of the day, I think the NDIA has put out the minimum refurbishment costs in a way to discourage people from doing that. They want new build. They want brand new properties that are well designed and are going to meet the participants' requirements. Is it going to be more expensive? Probably marginally, yes. But you're going to end up with a far superior product. If you think about doing a refurbishment of an existing property, you might not have the internal spaces that are going to suit. You're not going to have the right room layout. When you're talking about having every bedroom with a bathroom, it often just is not feasible to do a refurb. It's better to just knock it down, start again. Simple answer to that question. If you do a refurb, and yes, it might meet the design guidelines, but it might not be good design. And really, at the end of the day, what we've learned is good design is of paramount importance in having an SDA property that is going to be a successful investment property. Another question here: when in the process should an investor engage the SIL provider? Well, not necessarily just the SIL provider, but you should be talking to different providers or engaging with an SDA provider 6 months out for sure, because that's where the marketing, as Mehul mentioned, the search for the tenants really should be starting. It takes that long to find participants. So, and if you're just going to be limiting yourself to engaging with one SIL provider, you might be limiting yourself. So really, it's a matter of putting it out there to the entire market in the area. But yeah, we would say 6 months is when you should be starting that process.
True. And I would add one thing that, the way market is changing and investors are getting more educated as well. A simple rule that if the SIL provider who has a participant, we will give business to you. That's what I was referring to. That don't basically sign something prematurely and just say that if you have a participant, you also as an investor look at their reputation, what they are saying, what is their size of business, how they're getting their participant. Some SIL providers are expert in mental health, some in physical health, some in both. We need to, and that's what we also help the investors to really go through that process and educating that this is how you can find your participant, and basically what not to do before you start going on that journey.
One last question just before we move on with the presentation. Who does the build? Also, who does the full project? If I was to do a knockdown rebuild, who do I work with for the full process? Look, yeah, sorry, you didn't give your name. So I can't call you by name. Apologies. Look, yeah, there are various organizations that can be engaged as a project management. Mehul's organization, SDA Choice, being one of them, if you're based in Melbourne. We do, as I mentioned, also do feasibility, and we can also do project management throughout other areas of Australia. So it is, Minh, do you want to quickly touch on this one?
Yeah, sure. It's as you've seen so far, it's a very challenging process, the whole knockdown rebuild process. There's plenty of people to collaborate with: the designer, the architect, the town planner, the assessor, the provider, the council, the builder. There's just so many parties involved. I mean, if you're in Melbourne, then definitely Mehul and his team can definitely provide that support, partial or full project management support service. We can provide ourselves partial only. You need to have someone on the ground wherever you are to really do that, deliver that service properly. There's not many guys out there who actually, and Australia is pretty large, like a country, so it's hard to have the right people in all those areas to do that work. I mean, finding the right block, the right area, the right builder, that's also very challenging. So back to the guy in Adelaide earlier, I mean, you can work with assessors and architects who are different locations to help you out. That's fine, but it is challenging to do. If you don't have the resources, if you're a passive developer investor, it's going to be challenging to collaborate with everybody on the ground. It is going to be challenging. We can provide some support at the very start of the whole process ourselves, but not fully. Mehul is pretty much the hands-on side of it all with construction delivery there. That's my answer, Debbie. I think that's all I can say, really.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. We just got a few more slides to quickly get through. So just an overview of the key partnerships here. If you want to just run through those, Mehul.
Yeah, so I think that we covered the most of them. From the architect and designer, we touch base. That's very important for the design. The town planner usually sits with architect or separate, but yeah, they work with the council mainly. In Victoria, it is exempted. In most of the council I have worked with, the SDA assessor, we mentioned that they are actually regulated and appointed by NDIS, and that is the only person who is registered, and they have basically like a good knowledge. They need to have an access consulting background, and then they actually go into that far. But it's very important that we select the right SDA assessor. um, uh, SDA builder, as I mentioned, that we need to get the builder who have built SDA projects. And again, there is no license for builder to become SDA, and that's where again the project management and planning and selecting your team. For example, electrician, plumber, um, carpenter, most of these trades are extremely important that they understand the NDIS guideline. And then you have SEAL and SDA providers, which we discussed just earlier, but they are the people, quite often the way is structured, which I tend to disagree, that lots of responsibilities given to SDA providers while they have a lesser control. SDA providers are more of a property management arm, rather than the actual disability management arm. So it's very important that don't expect SDA providers knowing about the disability. They understand the legal, they understand the property management, and they collect the rent for you from the NDIA. And then I won't go into again too much detail, but yeah, so we have another webinar where we have really focused just on SEAL and SDA and what those parts involve. And the project manager, that is basically project management is a very like a broad word. You can decide as an investor what you want to do and what you don't want to do. And as a project manager, I always see what I really do for my project, that as an investor, I need to make the product viable. So let's say that if I'm charging as a project manager, as an example, I need to make sure that I'm adding that much value back, either through the time. It's all ROI driven. So it's not only reducing the trouble, time, and knowledge, it's really giving the benefit for the project management approach. And that's something I always take care for my project from that aspect. So when I allocate resources, I wear the investor hat and say, is it worth it? Because I can't do my projects every day. I need to build the team and make the processes to do so. So budgeting and financial viability, we have discussed that most of this. The one thing I'm sure investors would know, but rather than assuming, the key difference in knockdown rebuild, there are a lot. So bank won't fund for demolition. That's the classic example, that these are the money. Bank will only start as per the standard building contract. So all the cost which you are incurring before the building contract processes, that is something which you always plan, but I won't go into detail. But that these are the type of things. The cost blowouts, SDA design compliance, potential, the income, build quality. I'm just quickly going through to summarize everything. So I think that from we have discussed about the I would say that put minimum 10% contingency you for your overall cost. Little surprises, even if simple, like if one of my project, I didn't know it was actually on my land, there was lots of council asset, right? And there were all the drainage system from council asset. I had to pay significant amount for underground drainage just as per the council law. Now, these sort of things are not overruled by town planning. If it's a flood zone, you need to look at that. So again, won't go in details, but that should be done at the site feasibility stage. That should be looked at by the expert by doing that. And obviously, no one teaches you. I learned pretty much. I have a story for every project I have done for myself. That's why I can just come and give the random example. But yeah, SDA design and compliance, we already discussed. The compliance part is important. I have seen many investment in a green field where people halfway tried to change the normal house into the SDA homes and things like that. So try not to do that in the knockdown rebuild. It's a very special process for that. The income is obviously we have the whole income calculations in the ROI. That's what Mean and Debbie provides all that information. It's we can get that information. It's very easy. But again, one thing I would say that you always count contingency. If the calculator is saying you get $100, you work on 70. That's the principle. So if you get 90, you are happy. But rather than you go for 100, so you build your ROI and your the entire cost analysis on that. Vacancy risk and location demand, we touch base. Future proofing extras, which we discuss in the example I gave you, like and the other slide it will come, I will discuss on the future proofing. The key like it's some features are very simple and less costly and can make a huge difference, and some features are extremely expensive, and then you see whether it's putting any extra capital value in your build. So you need to see both, not just the rental component. Capital value is extremely important, because I always see that, imagine if I get retired and if I want to move into this particular property because I may be in the wheelchair, would I be able to live there? So that sort of forward thinking you have to look from that aspect.
Minh, did you want to say something?
I want to go follow on from what Mehul said earlier about 10 minutes ago about the whole costs before you even start the process of your development project, right? So you got to have cash up front before you begin. To pay the town planner, 10K. Architect, 20K. Demolition, 50K. Council application fees, 10K. Research analysis and feasibility, 10, 15K. SDA certification, pre-certification, 10K. That's 100,000 right there. right? 100,000, and that's after you buy the old house to knock it down, right? So you've got to have those costs up front first to do all that preparation work, and then your 30% of the project as well, right? Which is the land and the build. So as Mehul said earlier, the banks could not fund all these costs. This is beforehand separate to the 30% deposit for the 70% LVR. Yeah.
Yeah, true.
Thank you.
And obviously this is a nice segue into this slide. Thanks, Min. But this is the different type of projects we have been doing, and that's why I like to do all different scenarios. So, when there is the front house with 2+1 HPS, and there is a back villa, then there is a straightforward 3+1. So that's so important that you have all the different categories. And how I go for my development is that I decide my budget, I decide the vacancy and the supply demand, and then I try to secure the site. So that is also the order of that process is very important, so investors don't get lost and go and waste too much time. It is such a streamlined process of doing that, and that applies to even non-NDIS investment. I have done for years. That what is the corner block, non-corner block, this that. So all those things are important. But one thing it came to my mind just recently, that quite often I have given recently one example, that someone is having a 1.1 million investment into a greenfield area with 1+3 HPS. Take a scenario, and that person is not finding a participant. That person is not getting any rent, and that person is now happy to put that property back on market for even 30 grand, 40 grand. That's the extreme scenario, but there are many of this I'm lately hearing. Now, at the same time, if you go with the knockdown rebuild, this is also comes into the cost question. And you find, recently I found a land when the old lady is subdividing and putting the another land in established suburbs. And I said, I will build only one villa. It will cost me 700, 750, but my $70,000 is guaranteed. So when I said guaranteed again, it is talking for myself. Higher chances of that. In this example, it was a buzzing suburb, even normal house is not available, land is not available, and that also gives me a bit of a power in auction to go and put extra 10, 15 grand, because my product ROI was very different in this example. So this is a real life example. So there is a way to make your investment work. And that's also not always it's easy, but you cannot start NDIs. Another thing I learned, that I just tell my wife and say, okay, this year we will do 3 projects. It doesn't work in knockdown rebuild. If you're lucky, you may get one. If you are not, you don't get the site, you don't start the project. That's again sharing from my own example. Yes, you do your homework, but it's not like you won't while in a green field, it's very in your control. You said, oh, this is the land and house package, and I will like this plot, I will build in here, versus in that's why you need a bit of a preparation. So yeah, these are the actual sites, but I thought this is good example in giving the affordability versus return on investment in knockdown rebuild. Not always you need to go for 3+1 and the higher rent. These are the different things. I also learn about class B in Victoria, especially. The classifications are really my first project got delayed by 6 months. Because of as I mentioned, that you don't know everything. So the class 3 is obviously fire sprinklers by default. Class 1B is different grade, but now people are getting more awareness about this, and I won't go too much detail, but it's very important that you understand the classification of your bill. So yeah, this is like the one of the actual project. All the pictures are related to the same project. This is in established suburb. It is the knockdown rebuild, how the demolition takes place, how uh, the frames, the plaster wall. That I think in the bottom right you can see that the bench I was talking about, adjustable bench with the full size. Often people try to cut it, and the actually cooktop is right in the middle, and two wheelchair can stay on either side. So even your white goods are disability approved. So you need to get specific the goods, plumbing fittings, your the sink, the knobs should be longer handle. Every little thing goes into the making, and everything is part of that SDA assessment. That what fixtures and fittings and white goods and everything which you are using, white goods in terms of dishwasher and microwave and pantry and all those things. But yeah, and this is the design, the floor plan which I was referring to. Really, I think someone in Adelaide who asked the question, that this is the classic example of the site optimization. You can see that this is 32 square house, very big house. It's the biggest footprint, 1.2-meter wide door. It has got the hallway you can see, the open kitchen, meals and living area. So if we have to pretend that three people in wheelchair with average 150 kilogram of weight, with the heavy wheelchair, are happily living, moving, eating, cooking in that open area. And that's make you can see that the front bedroom. So the when you enter in the house, the left hand side, it's a OOA, the no stepless entry from the garage to the house. Many people make this mistake, and at the slab stage, they did all this, but they can't get the garage on the same height to the house when you enter into the house. Then you go to the bedroom one on the left hand side. The right hand side is the activity area, which I get such a great feedback on this. And I can say this is our own design, more fitted to the site. And then you have the mills, and that side is there. And then we have separated this particular area. The two bedrooms are at the back and separated by the bathrooms, and you see they are huge bathrooms. So this is a fully high physical support, fire sprinklers, backyard alfresco, through and through accessibility, little things like clothing line, accessibility for washing, the independent living. Even people are in wheelchair, they should have all the availability and accessibility, so they can live life like us. That's all you put in your design. But yeah, that's the design example. And the common challenges and solutions, which we touch base on that. But if anything I have not covered, the the budget management, over engineering, so I think over engineering is something that, again, this is my own example. I got carried away in 1B. I said, I just in 1B, usually you don't need the fire sprinkler. And I said, no, I want fire sprinkler. Long story short, it costed me 40 grand, and I'm not complaining, because I wanted fire sprinkler in my house. So we had to go through the plumbing line, 50 ml copper pipe. You need to go through the whole, cut the ceiling, and then because I need to get that after occupancy permit, otherwise it never gets back. So because it was not on the original plan. So all those things, which is, I'm giving the bad example of my over engineering, but again, that was a calculated cost. The participant disengagement is the big one. That's where your SDA provider and SIL provider is so important. Three things. One, as an investor, you need to know how the SIL provider and SDA provider relationships are working. You need to know a little bit of the dynamics of the three people in this example who are going to live in your property. And the third thing, your internal processes with SDA provider about the maintenance, repairs, and all the other stuff. These are like you are sitting miles away, and someone's inefficiency is costing you, a participant. So that's what you need to manage that. And that's earlier we touched base. But participant disengagement, both from the service provider point of view and internal matching of the participant. Even in the one house, non-disabled people live and they may not get along. So this is an extra important thing. And again, we have a separate webinar on that, but this is just to touch base on the participant disengagement. This is like more of a summary. We covered most of these items, but these are the high level processes in the project management, whatever name you give it, they are important. Then we just covered into like a 4 different phases, or you can do before, during, after. But the short listing is important of the service providers. I would say that what earlier we discussed about this, but one thing I forgot to mention is important, that what you are building and what type of service you need. If I'm building a 3+1 simple knockdown rebuild, I don't need to hire an architect who has got you know, the the 15th floor office in the CBD. I'm just joking, but what I mean that the complexity of your project and ROI determines everything we go for. So I have an architect who will charge, for example, $100, $150, and $200 for the same job. But then it's very overwhelming for investor. You often say that's my again my one of the project. It took me 3 months to select the architect because it's such a vast difference. And this is most important another thing. You will find people under the name of NDIS. The price will go up by 20 to 30% in the building industry. That's just given. So all those things are important, that what people are charging under the name of NDIS versus what's the reality. And it starts from architect as well, unfortunately. So all these things are important, that how you optimize, which I was giving the example that if you are spending extra cost on project management or any services, that should give you the return of your that's services directly tangible in your cost savings, time savings, and the product overall quality of the product. So yeah, that I think that covers the marketing and tenant matching something. What that means is that you need to go, those days are gone that you go on the SEO, SEM. We have been doing variety of things, but it is very important that how much you are in the community, how you are promoting your property. It's a three-pronged approach. You go out there, you invite people. We do our old school barbecues. We call the people from the disability industry, the support coordinators and things which Debbie touched base earlier. So it is really someone has to have that passion, connection. Just sending invitation is not enough. People won't come if they don't trust you. So the reputation is very easy to build and lose in this industry because it's extremely sensitive from that aspect. So yeah, I think that is something I would say on the overview of the whole different things which we discuss.
Thank you, Mehul. I think we just got another last slide here, which was a process summary that we have used in a previous webinar presentation. Just wanted to add in that slide. We won't go through that, but again, it is there for everyone to just have a look at the process, the timing of all of that, what needs to be done first. It's kind of obvious when you're looking at it, but good to know that there's a lot more to it. Minh, please.
Yeah, I want to just talk about the first step, the product selection. A lot of investors have no idea where to begin. If you went off to your architect or town planner, they're going to say to you, well, what do you want to build? And then the investor yourself, you say, well, I don't know. What should I build? And that goes back to DDD, Debbie. What does the DDD acronym mean for us?
Design, data, and desirability.
And how do those three relate back to the concept design or design?
Absolutely. So obviously your data, supply and demand, so important. Design, getting the right design that is going to work for the tenants, the prospective tenants living in the house, as well as the care providers working in the property. And desirability, that it is a desirable type of dwelling, it is a desirable location, that all those things come together. So when I'm talking about the design of the house, that's what the product selection is really about. Is it a house? Is it a villa? How does that work with the supply and demand in the area? So all of those things are really very intertwined.
And I'll give you an example. I mean, you have a block, you buy a nice big block with the old house, you knock it down, and then what do you build on that site? Well, what are the options here? You've got a normal house, low set, split a block, two blocks side by side, two houses, sell one block off, build one house, do a big double-story house, or split a block, two double-story houses with lifts, duplex, villa site, manor home, complex of apartments, dual occupancy, dual key. There's 7 to 10 designs here. Now, decision on the design of the product goes back to the data. How many are being built in the area? What's being built? What is the need? Is it robust? Is it IL? Is it FA? Is it HBS? what's the pipeline of places in the area? You know, are you first to market? Speed to market is very important. You know, and then your budget. How much can you afford to spend here? So with an unlimited budget, anything's possible, obviously, but cost overruns and whatnot are a big problem. So it's very important to not just take the word of the architect only, or the town planner only, or the builder only. You'll take on board everyone's advice who's working together on your project, so that you can deliver a customized product. This, whether you like it or not, this is a custom product. It's not a volume build product out in sticks, out in the greenfield areas. This is a brownfield knockdown rebuild inner, middle to inner ring suburbs, which in its own right, by being in that location, is going to attract demand because of where it's located. But you can't be sure. You got to go above and beyond that, which is class 3 fire sprinklers, hire a landscape architect, spend $100,000 on the landscape architecture there as well. It's going to cost you $1.5 million for this, right? Plus the $100,000 up front cash beforehand, as I said earlier. So if you want to spend $900,000, go out and buy a house out in Werribee if you want, or Tarnee, $800,000 there, no worries. But if you want a middle ring suburb, it's $1.3 to $1.5 million knockdown rebuild cost there. And it's customized for the marketplace. And if you want to ensure that you don't end up with a inferior product, right, then you got to go the extra mile to deliver a good product, which is extra space, extra everything, Debbie. We haven't talked much about the future proofing. Debbie, give me a whole bunch of examples of future proofing, please, Debbie.
Second living space, more height adjustable equipment in the kitchen, bathrooms, bedroom wardrobes. As Minh said, landscaping, an accessible vehicle on site, more storage space for the sills, a larger office and separate area for the care providers.
That's an OOA room and an office space as well. Yes.
Yeah. So there's I mean, so many different things you could consider. And as Mehul did touch on, how many of those are worth it? And that all comes down to your budget and the demand in the area and how much you need to future-proof it to attract the tenants. But it's a lot there to think of. And I just want to go back to something Minh just said before. Please don't buy in Werribee or Tarnee. Very oversupplied areas. But yeah, I think that's a good summary of, you know, to the early importance of getting the concept right.
I would say a good rule of thumb, Debbie, for everyone to consider is no more than 30 kilometers from your metro CBD, near a hospital, near a train station, Westhill Shopping Centre. They're just the basic amenities right there. If you're missing all of those in your site selection, do not buy that block knockdown rebuild. You got to have those there. Yeah. Plus have your power team around you as well, right?
Absolutely.
That's very important.
So I think this is a wrap up. The key takeaways from today: tailored compliance. So a knockdown rebuild will really give you a bespoke, tailored product that is going to be far more fit for purpose. And prime locations, as Minh has just mentioned, exactly what they are. Look, participants, as Mehul said, a lot of them weren't able to find SDA properties in the area where they'd lived all their lives, where their families live, where their social networks are. But they'll move back to those areas as properties become available. So that's where you really want to be concentrating on those established older suburbs, because that is where we know the demand is across the country. You need to have a sustainable investment here. So building a purpose-built property, a bespoke property that will meet the demand in the area is we never say guarantee in this game, but it's going to give you the best chance of getting a better return on investment at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, you are providing a a home for participants to get much more independence completely changes their lives in these properties when they can do a lot more for themselves. Mehul, please talk about, you know, how it does change a participant's life, the right property.
Yeah, I think it's literally for us like our house. Like, you know, when you go from, if you go away from your own house and how you feel that change management, the comfort zone, that sort of thing. But I think there is also emotional aspect. Someone is making a significant decision of their life to call it a home, because those SDA homes are 10 years, 15 years, 20 years people live and more. So it is such a big decision for them. As a other side of the fence, we don't realize that, and we see that on our other part of business where it's sick. And I used to think, what's the big deal? It's such a beautiful house. So it's not necessarily just the all the modern features will tick the box, or all those little things you need to look at. But yeah, it's more about the emotional factor is huge as well. That's what I'm trying to say. And for us also, anyone, it's little change in our living situation changes, and you are just, your world goes upside down. That inclusivity, having accepting the details of their habits, their routines, what they like, their pets and preferences, for everything comes. It's a social aspects, emotional aspects, and the physical aspects of the house. You need to cater all three things, and you need to build the supporting environment, not just the property features, but also the human component of the service delivery. That makes a perfect investment outcome for any investor.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mehul. Look, that wraps up the presentation. We don't have a lot of time left for questions, but if you do want to connect with Mehul, SDA Choice, obviously that QR code will take you directly there. If you want to contact NDIS Property Australia, the contact details are there. But I will just go to a couple more questions that we've got coming in here. From Anonymous again, you've mentioned that the rent will be reduced if it's a refurbished dwelling rather than a new build. Please explain. Well, firstly, I'll say that I guess there's different kind of refurbishment, but if you're doing refurbishment to new build compliance, it will be the full rent. I'm not sure, Mehul, what you were actually referring to when
So yeah,
you
so
talked
so
about
what
that.
means that if you research, it's called the new stock, existing stock, legacy stock. Lots of industry jargon, and I'm sure, hope that is the same name still used. But yeah, so it's very open information. If you Google it or you go on NDIA website, and you can see that the difference. There is a rate calculators there. So you can just at a very high level, and then obviously you need a consultant or someone expert to give you more details about those scenarios, the area and this and that, the OA, without OA, fire sprinkler, non-fire sprinkler. So there are different inputs which is determining your outcome of your rent. But the fire sprinkler versus suburb versus OA, no OA is not significant into your rental outcome. But the legacy stock or existing stock versus the new build has got significant difference.
Far
So
less, yeah.
that's what I mean, that you need to check the pain versus gain when you make those calls in converting something existing.
Yeah. Another question here. Hi, team. What does CBD mean, e.g., Sydney and the like, or also regional towns, CBDs, example, Newcastle, obviously. Minh would like to answer that.
CBD, Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Perth. Regional will be town centres. So is Newcastle a city? I would call it
Yes,
yes.
it's
Well,
a
there it
city.
is. Right? So why I say 30 kilometres or 30 minutes is because the lenders have a issue, a problem with anything outside of 30 kilometres, 30 minutes
It
drive.
depends
So
on the city. You've got maybe
true.
25 kilometres from a smaller city, 35 from a larger, but
But
as a rough figure.
just stay safe, stay within 30 minutes drive
Yeah.
from the
And
centre.
and I would also add to that, if you're talking about more regional centres, stick to something that's got a significant population, 20,000 or more. Building SDA in smaller markets is very problematic, not the least of having a very small number of SDA participants. But something that people don't consider is how many care providers are in the area, are based in the area as well. So is there even a market for SDA there? There might be 3 or 5 SDA funded participants, but it could just make it too difficult, too marginal to have a successful investment. So stick to areas with significant unmet demand in larger regional or the big cities. Nicholas, how difficult is it to secure a head lease with a registered NDIS provider? Generally, in almost all cases, what you'll find is you have a head lease with the SDA provider. The SDA provider is essentially just the property manager. It should not be difficult to secure that head lease, but that does not guarantee you participants. They will obviously do their best to get participants in the property because they don't make any money without it. They'll make the engagement fee, but they will obviously get their ongoing income from the management fees when tenants are in the property. So not difficult in general. However, there's some areas where we know that the SDA providers are under-resourced. They already have a lot of properties on their books. They don't want to take on anymore. So it's then a matter of finding other SDA providers who may not be as established in the market. There are new ones coming on all the time. You've just got to ring around. But it in some areas, for example, we know that in Southeast Queensland, it can be difficult to get a provider to take on a property. Same in Perth. In other areas, it should not be so difficult.
Yeah.
Christian, hi Christian. You've got a couple of questions here. You want to know how to build SDA houses. I think we're actually organising a meeting with you coming up in the near future. So we might go into that then. But you've also asked, who does the maintenance on the property once a SIL provider has participants living in the house? Also, is the rent a commercial lease or residential? Who pays the land tax, service fees and insurance on the property and house? Lots of questions. Mehul, do you want to address those?
Yes, I think that the SDA provider looks after the maintenance. They are like an equivalent of a real estate agent for the property agent, I should say. So from that part, but their critical role is to collect the rent and check all the paperwork of the participants, their funding. So it's not just the property, but they need to know the actual rent mechanism and the plans of the participants and what funding has been given to them. It's not like I have built high physical support, that means I can get $80,000 rent. It is participant by participant. SDA provider needs to change how the process works. That you need to have a two component. One is the SDA component, which is given by NDIA, that's been charged by NDIA, and then there is we call the MMRC, so participants Centrelink rental assistance and their disability pension, that collectively makes the 100% component of your rent. And that is the type of things SDA provider needs to be really good educated in terms of making those processes, helping along the way, getting timely registration of the property, what are the rental agreements are for, and then the maintenance and management. So I'm giving you the more holistic thing. It is the nature of commercial type of contract when it comes to that, and it's a set contract with SDA provider does. And then there is a SIL provider. The SDA provider negotiates with the SIL provider on your behalf. And that's the internal negotiation. And if, for example, if the house is really good, the SIL provider will go and give more sweetener to SDA provider to secure the house. But when I said good means that it's a high demand house. But if the house is not in high demand, SIL provider asks, can you give me the free white goods? Can you give me the furniture? Can you waive off the 1 month of rent? Standard property market. So this is the day in day out. This is how the I'm painting the picture how it works. But yeah, so SDA provider, people often underestimate. And last thing to add while we are on the topic, the SDA provider registration is compared to the SIL provider is relatively easy. It's a just you need to do one module of NDIS, module 5, and you get the SDA provider. So people from real estate industry, building industry, development industry, they often get into the SDA provider pathway, but then again it's a bit complex based, and NDIS is getting very strict with the auditing and requirements. So that's the holistic answer of, I think I covered most of your question.
Yeah, I think also just with the insurance and service fees, well,
Yeah.
insurance, property owner.
Property owner, yeah. Property owner is
Rates, property owner.
insurance. There is a specific, only some insurance companies, they are doing the NDIS insurance. Again, that's the technical thing, but we are running out of time. But yeah, it's very important that you really cover your insurance, and you also ask what insurances SIL provider has. And what insurances SDA provider has, because collectively sometimes all three parties are involved.
Thank you. Look, we do have a couple more questions, but I think we need to wrap it up. So very, very quickly answer these. How important is being close to a train station or bus stop? How close should the property be?
Very, very, very,
Very
important.
important.
Can you imagine being in a wheelchair, having no access to a bus or train? Where do you go? If that's the case, you wouldn't even live there to begin with. So if you have no bus stop and train station and Westfield Shopping Centre nearby, it'll be vacant, and hospital will be vacant. So to answer your question, train station 500 meters, no more than 500 meters. Bus stop 200 meters. Shopping centre no more than 5 minutes on 10 minutes on a bus stop. Because if you don't have those in the area, you're living in a very remote, boring location, which means no one's going to live there, which means it'll be empty. So
Yeah.
I highly rate the importance of a bus stop, train station, shopping centre, and hospital nearby. Otherwise, it's a dead stock product. Yeah.
And you know, we call it rolling distance. So just common sense. You know, if you can roll that distance easily in a wheelchair, then it's a good location. And the very last one, we won't take any more questions. For Mehul, what is the ballpark total cost for a knockdown rebuild in the middle area of Melbourne? Pick whatever area, including property purchase, build, all costs, etc. Assume whatever build you like. I just want to get a top line sense of it.
So as Minh mentioned, that 1.5 million is what you should go, and then you get obviously how much optimization you can get from the site. Lots of things are site specific. So 1.5 million is the general rule in those, and I would also say that even you further split, you cannot get the land more than if it's a 3+1, let's say 600 square to 650 square, you should look for if you want to build minimum, if you want to build 1.3 again 1+3. So 25 to 30 square is the minimum size for 1+3 HPS as an example, and you need 600 to 650. That's your starting point to see which suburbs can give us that 700,000. I always look at $1,000 per square in Melbourne market. So that's that. So yeah, yes,
Minh.
Is it really 1.5 when you actually buy an old house for 1.5?
Yeah, so
you knock it down and then spend another 700 grand on top of that. Is it really
yeah.
$2 million really, or is it 1.5? You know.
So 1.5 is the minimum which you start with, and the rest is the site specific. So if you get the rough site and you need to do the excavation and all those, that's 100,000, for example. So yeah. So as I said, that it is depending upon the 1+3 versus villa. Your villa can be 800,000. Your full-fledged 1+3 in the area with 700 square to 700,000 to 800,000, it can go another 1 million in the build. So it 1.5 to 2 million is the actual minimum versus maximum, but then you can go with your own appetite. The beauty is, as I gave the villa example, that I want to start my first project only with $800,000 budget, 800, 900, and at least I can secure 70,000 return, which is 11 years break even. Right, so just giving the ROI on the yield point of view, and then you look back and say, okay, I'm holding my asset, I'm getting into real estate. It's not like any other investment. So I'm holding my asset and I'm getting the rental return, which has got the 11 to 13 years break even. I always go, one is the cost envelope, and the second one is the break even envelope. and the third is that how the appreciation will look like. So you are not going backwards for that asset. And often we discuss about the exit strategy. Again, market will mature, but there are many builders, developers are coming themselves into this industry, and I'm sure we may have in our audience as well that many builders and developers I have like used their services, and they are learning from me, and they are starting their business. Nothing wrong. So what I mean that people are building to sell. Not everyone is going through the whole cycle of going through the whole pathway. If you have a right product, right area, and you have a right partners, you can build for 1.6 and you can sell for 2 million. And if you sell with participant, it's like a commercial appraisal. That is like you have already rental lease agreements with people, and that value may more. So that's a whole another topic. But always look at what's your appetite, what's your affordability, what you can fit into your investment strategy, what that ROI or yield looks like, and then what is the exit look like.
Mm.
So that then it can give that.
Shout out to Jason McDaniel from Radius Property Group. I've spoken to Jason before in the past. He's done a fair bit of knockdown rebuilds. As he says there, if you have $2 million, don't even think about it. And that's very true.
Pretty
Because
much. Yep.
no matter how you think about this is a development. A knockdown rebuild is a development, right? That's what it is. So $2 million is on the money, not 1.4, 1.3, 1.2. It's $2 million.
Yeah,
to be
that's your
safe.
safe.
Yeah.
That's your safe starting point.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think we will wrap it up there. Apologies for going over time, or thank you for those of you who stayed with us to the end. I hope that you got something out of this today. And please, any questions you have for Mehul, do get in contact with him. That QR code will take you straight through to the website. And of course, you can reach out to us. Our contact details are on the slide, the last slide there, which you will all get a copy of. So thank you for spending your long lunch with us today. And till next time.
Thank you so much, Debbie and Minh and everyone.
Thank you, Mehul.
Lovely to share from whatever I've learned, but amazing engagement and great presentations, Debbie. Thank you. Thank you, Minh.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye all.
Cool.
Bye.
Thanks.